Hey everyone, this is the Mind Workshop podcast, and today we have Michael on. I'm super excited. We've known each other for a while. He's a great friend, and we have a great conversation every time we talk. And today we're going to talk a little bit about happiness, business culture, and we're really going to dive into it. But Michael, yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me. And it's really nice to be able to say I work with people in an industry that I'm actually friends with too. I don't know how rare that is or how often that happens, but I know, and for the first part, so I run an agency called Cartology. We work with brands on Amazon, a lot of times helping them how they have poor conversion rate or decreased conversion rate. They're seeing a decrease or lacking performance in sales for whatever reason, and helping them to level up and to win on Amazon. And then if they're not on Amazon, they're missing on that whole opportunity, a revenue stream there. We're helping them with that as well. Hello to Croatia. So that's what I do for work. But I've been in that e-commerce world for the past 13 years. First part of it was on my own, selling, running a business, and transitioned into the agency side about 6.5 years ago. But getting in that agency side, I started to encounter more people because before it was just me working on my business myself. I wasn't out in a community. And so it's cool to be able to have people that you, it's cool to have people that you're like, yeah, I enjoy this person. Like we saw each other recently at a show and I came up and, tapped you on the shoulder and punched you in the face. And like, hey, thanks for punching me. But I just was like, what's up, man? So good to see you. And we got a chance to hang out. Like that is very cool. Cause I think maybe in a corporate environment that doesn't always happen. So
yeah, it definitely takes a very long-term perspective, especially like I think at the first time we met, like we were technically like competitors, like hypothetically. Like I think it's important to have that long-term perspective of like saying, "Hey, you don't have to like necessarily like hate the people that you compete with. Like there's so much abundance in the world, and you don't have to necessarily like fight for like to like you don't have to fight and claw every single person to try to win. Like there's so much out there and you don't have to like kill people to do in order to do that. You can just kind of there's so much abundance in the world. There's no point
definitely
to
don't
that
have to
short-term
kill
mindset.
people
Yeah.
to do it literally or physically or metaphorically. But yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot out there if you're willing to see it that way, if you want to have an abundance mindset, but you could certainly not see abundance and see scarcity. And I think you start to react differently when this is something that I've read, something that I've seen be true. But like if you're if you're in sales and you're trying to bring on more clients or get more users for your software, whatever the case might be, if you're actively looking for people, you also start to see stuff incoming as well. I can't explain how that works. I don't believe in just you put out, good stuff and the universe will give you good stuff back. I think that's really vague. And but I can say that I have personally experienced when I am and if I'm going to be honest, I feel like it's not just the universe. Like there is God. We are created in that image, and I think it's a lot more. I think it goes a lot deeper than just that. But I do believe in like doing to others as you would have them do unto you. I believe in that just as much as you want to see something happen, you might pray for it to happen. Like you have to get your butt up and do the work too. And so when you start to do work, you start to see things come back. And so when I am doing work on something, if I'm trying to find new people, like I also start to notice this inflow of people that are looking for me too. So I do kind of feel like the energy you put out there is oftentimes what you attract as well. And if you're hateful and spiteful and uber competitive in a sense that you don't want anyone around, then I think you're going to attract that kind of
Mhm.
uh, environment around yourself for sure.
And I think there's a balance between working really, really hard. Like I think like we have this like dynamic where like there's a balance of working really, really hard, and then also like spiritually kind of like letting go and saying like let fate kind of take its path and saying like, hey, like so there's only so hard like there's a level of so much hard you can work, and making it where, and there's also a piece of it just like letting go and letting like life naturally go. Yes, you do have to work towards your goals, but it is also important to like let go and also like work really hard. So there's a balance between those things rather than work, because I used to work 14 hours a day, but at some level like you only need to work like maybe like 10 hours a day, like like that's
I'm down to 10 now, so I'm doing pretty well. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But there's some level of like letting it naturally flow and like letting life take you, because you get there sometimes faster than you were if you were to just like push like spearhead through kind of thing.
I think you're right. And I would even say maybe I don't know because I haven't measured it. Maybe you even arrive at the same time, but
Hmm.
you get there in much better fashion and you don't run yourself ragged. I can tell you that I set goals and I work to hit those goals, but I do not know what's going to happen today. I have no clue. I can't see into the future. I only have this present moment. So if something changes and I'm not expecting it and I get so bent out of shape about that change, I'm wasting a lot of time and energy. Now I'm not saying I don't get upset or frustrated at things, or I, am not having these conversations with myself in front of my wife where I'm like, walking through something like this happened and blah 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 blah, and she's just kind of hearing me dump or vent about it.
Hmm.
But so I do have to work through that stuff. But I think um, if you're constantly trying to make a specific thing happen and not just saying, hey, I want to work towards progress, I think you end up becoming really disappointed. If I could predict what was going to happen 6 years ago now, or if I tried to, I don't think I would have predicted this specifically, because life is not up and to the right. It's just it's not like that. There are peaks and valleys, and so when you make a fetish out of the mountaintops of I'm always going to feel this great and this good and it's always going to be perfect, when you get down into those valleys that are inevitable, you're going to be really disappointed. You're going to be really frustrated and upset. I think more than you need to be. Like my kind of this may seem dark, I don't know, but life is hard. Life is difficult. A lot of people deal with struggles, and you could break it down to like certain types of struggles, but everybody deals with problems. And I had a conversation with a friend this weekend who he was kind of belittling what he had been through and gone through, and I'm like, look, no one gets to choose what they're born into. No one gets to choose who they are, but everyone has struggles and things that they deal with. And the fact that you're here today is a testament to the work that you've done. So, I think that's worth celebrating, and you don't have to say, well, I'm this and you're this and
Hmm.
I haven't experienced as much as you've experienced.
Hmm.
I mean, everyone's got their struggles that they're dealing with.
Exactly. And I'd love to get your perspective on how you view your past and how you view your future. Like because a lot of people will either regret what they did in the past, and they'll say like, "Hey, like I can't believe I did all those things," and they never end up forgiving themselves for what they did in the past, and they also worry about the future. So I'd love to get your perspective on how you see the past and how you see the future.
Well, I saw a really smart person tweet out that how people view their past tells you a lot about what kind of person they are. Did you see
Mhm.
that tweet as well?
Yes, I did.
Who was it that tweeted it?
It was Victor Dwyer.
Speaks in the third person. I like it. Uh, that's a great question.
Mhm.
I think we are, as humans, are plagued by our past, and we have a really hard time letting it go. I have held on to. I think we've all done some bad things in our life.
Mhm.
Some of us have been disciplined, I would say, for them. Maybe others of us haven't been, and I'm not here to be the arbiter of who should and should not, have justice rain down on them,
Yeah.
or judgment, I guess I could say, and justice, prevails. But I have been the victim of just holding on to stuff, whether it's stuff that was done to me, stuff that I did that I felt bad or remorseful about. And at a certain point, you have to let that stuff go, because one, especially the stuff that people do to you, I've harbored resentment against people that I was close with, and I can certainly tell you it was affecting me, but it really wasn't affecting them very much because they didn't know how much I was frustrated or dealing with. And as soon as I honestly just repented of like holding on to that, like, God, I'm sorry I held on to this. It was way too long, and let it go, there was a total freedom in my life. Now there's still a temptation to harbor resentment against someone, but as soon as I'm like, you know what, I'm going to speak positively over that person, I'm going to find a way to love that person. That's a difficult thing. Someone who has hurt or harmed you, whether it's emotionally, physically, sexually, whatever the case might be, if someone has hurt you, that's a really difficult thing to do. So I'm not going to say it's easy, but if you can find a way to let go and find a way to love that person, I think you can experience a totally different kind of life, a one that feels more fulfilling. But then the stuff that you do, yeah, man, that's tough. I've definitely held on to things that I felt like, man, I'm a terrible person because of this. But if I'm able to just say like, you know what, I feel bad about that. Again, I'm going to repent. I'm going to let that go. And the repenting is just like, you can look at it however you want, but just saying, hey, I did this thing and I'm changing my ways. So it could be with someone, it could be a private confession, could be a public confession, but just I did this thing and I want to change my ways and move forward. Okay. Like you now have an opportunity to move forward and act and live differently. And that's really all that you have control over. I think, who was it that said my, something is the past, my presence is your present, kiss my ass.
What?
Yeah, I think it was a Kanye West lyric, but it was like, my presence is your present, and something about the past. I don't know, but like the past is gone, people. There's nothing we can do. I think you can, if you've done wrong to someone, you can ask them for forgiveness if it's not going to cause them, a ton of emotional damage. Like if there's something that you've done and you're just going to say sorry so you can feel better, it may be best if you don't go into that person's life and you just, go your own way. But if you feel like it's necessary to do, asking for forgiveness, whether they forgive you or not, but doing the act and then moving forward, because there's only right now. And I think the future is a really interesting concept. The future doesn't exist. There's no such thing. I mean, it exists in here. And if you're just listening, well, I don't know if this is only listening. I think it's all visual. So this is my head. People that don't know, but there's only right now. You only have control over your actions and reactions to things in this exact moment. So I think it makes sense. Like I think as humans, we often carry guilt, and maybe we learn that over time. You need to feel bad for this thing that you've done. And I think you should have remorse, but the best way to go away from that is to ask for forgiveness and move forward in a different capacity.
Yeah. And I've noticed the people that don't end up giving forgiveness are the ones that have trouble even forgiving themselves most of the time. So if someone doesn't forgive you for what you did, most likely they have a really hard time forgiving themselves. And that makes it very, very difficult because they're hurting inside also. So
if you say I can forgive you, but I will never forget, that is not forgiveness. I will 100% disagree with you on that, because you're still holding on to what that person did. And you have every right to be offended at something. You have every right to be hurt, but it does you no good to hold on to that. So if you can let that go, and sometimes it's just sitting with that and saying, hey, this person did this thing. Am I still alive? Number one. Two. Yes. Two. I jumped to two before I said number one. Two. Do I have food and water? Yes. Three. Do I have clothing? 4, do I have a home? Yes, or at least a place to rest my head. 5, and even if you don't have those things, can you find things to be thankful for, and say I don't need to hold on to that past thing or that past hurt? Because again, it's there's a book I read called The Four Agreements, and it basically talks about how everybody sees life in their own. It's like they're watching their own movie. And if I were to go into Victor Dwyer's movie of his life and say, like, who's that really weird, funny looking guy? And you'd be like, oh wait, that's you. And I'm like, that's not what I look like. But you see things how you see things. I mean, hopefully I'm not just a funny looking guy, but you see things the way that you see things. And so if you are a negative person, it's likely you're not. But if so you're a negative person, you're likely going to reflect negativity on those other people around you. And it is going to be hard for you to forgive people because you're just negative and hard on yourself. And so you can't give it to yourself. How are you going to give it to other people? And a lot of times when I'm mad or pissed about something, it has very little to do with the other person. It has a lot to do with how I'm feeling frustrated about something or someone. And it's my own like work that I have to do to get through that.
So question for a person that has that negative mindset, how, like, you, as you probably know, it's a reinforcing cycle of like the negativity in your brain makes it where you only see negative, and where it's like this negative reinforcing cycle. How would you recommend someone to kind of break out of that negativity cycle to where they can start getting more in that positive mindset and start getting more happy on a day-to-day basis?
I would say hang out with you is one. I mean, I think there's a practice of gratitude. So finding things to be thankful for, and it could be verbally saying, I'm thankful that I have my friend Victor Dwyer. It could be going to that person and say, hey, I appreciate you. Thank you. But that alone, you start to break the patterns or the neural pathways in your brain that have reinforced negativity, and you start to build new neural pathways. So if you are changing, I'm not a scientist, but in all the like books that I read on the brain and biology, and even spirituality as well, you can retrain yourself. So if you can start a practice of gratitude, there are many times where I'm like, you know what? I'm not thankful for what happened, but I'm going to choose to be thankful. I'm going to choose to be thankful. There are times in my life when I've been in a really, bad place. I wasn't doing the work that I wanted to do. I wasn't in the job that I wanted to do. I wasn't happy with the relationships that I had, whatever the case might be. And there were, Stevie Wonder has a song that says, just go have a talk with God. Like when you feel your life's too hard, just go have a talk with God. And I do that. Like, you know what? I'm not happy about where I'm at right now, but I'm thankful that I'm alive, and I want to get to that place where I am happy with and joyful for the things that I've experienced. And it takes time, but you have to retrain yourself to get there. So I think starting a practice of gratitude, and honestly looking at, who do I surround myself with? Am I surrounding myself with positive people? Am I surrounding myself with negative people? Are the people that I am around, do they want to see me succeed, or are they constantly trying to drag me down? And when you start surrounding yourself with the right people, and not just people that are like, you're great, but people that are like, hey, that thing you did, that was really rude. You shouldn't have done that. People that can challenge you. Like one of the best relationships I have was with myself, but the second one is my wife. The relationship I have with my wife, I'm so blessed to have that relationship, because it's not just encouragement and building up, but it's, you were too rough on our daughter. You snapped too quickly. You were not patient. And I am open to that critiquing because it means I get better. But if I don't have people that are not just encouraging, but that are challenging me too, I'm not going to get better. So I have to say, you know what, I'm changing. I'm putting the right people around me to actually have a different mindset. What would you recommend people do?
Yeah. So it not only do people matter, But in this digital age, it also, you have to remember the content that you watch matters. So, like for example, when you're going through TikTok and you're consuming 3 hours a day of TikTok, those people that you're going through, the majority of those people that you're watching, that influences the information that you gather in your brain, which also influences your perspective on how you see the world. So if you're going through and you're only looking at negative posts, things that are bad, like first of all, the human brain is normally drawn to negativity. Like there's the negativity bias, which means you are going to be naturally drawn toward negative posts, and you're going
It's
to
a little
remember
more
that a lot more.
exciting. It's a little more exciting if you think about it. Like it invokes a reaction where it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
feel good, you know? Like so I totally get that.
Exactly. And that's where you have to realize that the brain is naturally drawn to negative things. And like I usually do the 3 to 1 rule, meaning that for every 3 negative posts you remember, you're going to remember 1 positive post. So that's where you have to like offset that and say, okay, like this 1 positive post, like you have to really like make sure you emphasize that and look at more positive things, because your brain is more likely to remember the negative out of every single scenario. So if you constantly look at more positive things and look at more positive content, that's going to influence how your brain is, because most of us now use our phones more than we talk to other humans, like the when we interact with them. But the brain, social media is like basically tricking the brain, saying this is our social interaction for the day,
Mm.
and that's actually like it's no longer the 5 people that you are around anymore. It's more like the 5 people that you watch on TikTok almost.
So
That
not just the people that are in your community that
yeah,
you're surrounding yourself, but who are you surrounding yourself with from a mental perspective. Yeah, that makes
exactly.
I think a ton of sense.
And what's great about that, what's a good thing about that is that you can choose that exactly. Like you might not be able to choose your friends around your community. Like most like there's only so many people around you that are going to be good influences. But for example, if I want to like idolize Gary Vaynerchuk, and that's like my I do idolize him, and he's an awesome guy. And if I want to take some of his attributes and take his philosophies on happiness, I can go to him, watch all his content, and start to influence that mindset into who I am, and be able to change the way I think that way. And I think it's really powerful. So if you realize that you're able to change the content and say, hey, I want to be this type of person, let me watch some of his content, you're going to naturally adopt that mindset as you watch more and more things off of that. And it's really fascinating.
Yeah, I think environment is it's crucial to how you view things.
Yes, and I think the biggest point I'm trying to like communicate to the world is that these thoughts in our head are just like these are just voices in our head. They're just thoughts. Like they're something that can be manipulated and changed over time. A lot of people go through that automatic process of like, oh, I hate who I am. Then that's just exactly how it is, and I can't change that. Like that's not how it is. Like you can change the way you think if you like incorporate positive people in your life, incorporate positive content in your life. Like that can change your thoughts on how you think about things, that will be able to have more positive things. So it's really important that like these things that you think about in your head, they're not just like that's not exactly who you are. That's just thoughts, and you can change those voices. It's really
I had a
fascinating.
psychiatrist one time tell me that your thoughts are just thoughts.
Yeah,
They're
they
they're
are.
they're not actions. They're not anything. Now, I think that's true. What you choose is what you want to continue thinking about. So,
Mhm.
if I am really wanting to be loyal to my wife, if I'm thinking about other women and what they would look like naked all the time, am I really being now? I might have a thought come up, but I can be like, I don't want to think about that. I'm gonna push that away.
Mhm.
Uh, or just say, look, hey, I recognize that's a thought. I'm not going to be upset about that. I'm just going to, move on. But if I choose to perseverate and like fantasize about stuff in my mind, that becomes a different story. And that's when that thought starts to sink in
Grow.
and yeah, and become more of the next step to an action. Here's a dark example, but this is an example of why what you put your in front of your mind is super important. A lot of people, I think the perception is starting to change, but I think that pornography is bad.
Mhm.
a lot of people might say differently, but I think that's starting to change. Not only is there trafficking that's involved, but if you look at the content that's there, it is super degrading to women, very violent, very aggressive. And the more that you find out about how it's being produced, you know that it is not equitable at all. But also, we're creating this idea of the not a reality of what sex is really like. I don't know anybody that is like, yes, I've always had sex like porn stars do. Like that's not the reality of things. But people that consume pornography, and by the way, if you're out there and you are addicted to pornography, I'm not judging you. I want you to go and get help. And everyone deals and struggles with something. So there are people out there that want to help you. But it's not a good stimulus. Like if you have a problem with drinking, drinking should not be something that's a part of your life. If you have a problem with overeating, like, constantly eating things that are triggers for you, that's not a good thing for you. You still have to eat. You can't not eat, but what you consume matters. And so people that consume pornography, it might start as something very, I don't want to say innocent, but it might start with something very like bland, something very vanilla. That's and so there's not just, I think, a spiritual component here, but there's also a psychographic component where you start to crave more stimulus. So I don't know the exact science behind it, but there is somewhat of a dopamine reaction, and it doesn't become enough. Just like any drug, any food, any kind of crack, not that I would know, alcohol, whatever the case might be, there's a stimulus and it becomes not enough. And so you start to crave more aggressive stuff, and you start going down this pathway of, what can I do that's really going to fill this desire? Then you start looking at violent stuff. Then you start looking at stuff that is, just awful. And it gets to a point, if you look at the people who, like, there's a big problem in the Philippines where people are something called OSEC, or online sexual exploitation of children. They're basically ordering pornography of children on demand. And wow. people are that are poor or that are not educated very well are taking advantage of these kids. And the people that get to that point start out with very more neutral stuff. And it becomes just a little bit more until, like, it could even be something in real life. A lot of people who commit rape or violent crimes, they say it started out with watching pornography and it turned into something they wanted to turn into reality. So I think that's I know that's kind of a dark thing to talk about, but it's the reality that what you put in is very much what's going to come out. And if you're getting some kind of stimulus that you eventually feel like you need to feed that monster, it can get really out of control really fast. Now, I'm not in today's day and age, you could go on Instagram and see pornography. I mean, it's very, very easy. So you have to guard yourself. Like, hey, I'm not going to look at this person because I know what kind of content they post. Or, okay, I see someone who followed me. I can tell by that image that's basically someone that's nude. I'm not going to click on that profile. I might be curious, but I'm not going to go click on that profile. And that's where, like, the thoughts are thoughts. Like, hey, I wonder what's on their profile. It's like, I'm going to check myself. I might be curious what's there, but I know that what I'm going to find is probably not going to be a good thing. So I'm going to stay away from that.
Yeah, I feel like it's even harder for guys because, like I'll notice myself. I didn't realize this until I, like, started going out in public more often, like after COVID. But, like, we like subconsciously check out girls, and, like, we don't even know it. Like, I wasn't even aware of it. And, like, this one girl I was dancing with, she realized I did it. And I didn't even, like, it was so subconscious. It's, like, ingrained in my brain to do it that I was like, why? I started analyzing myself, like, my eyes. I was like, don't do it, eyes. And then I noticed myself that my eyes.
Don't do it, eyes.
I was like, please, like, stop. And, like, I do it subconsciously. So I have to like actually consciously not program myself not to do it because it's so, like, ingrained. So I don't know why, like, that happens, but for some reason, like, especially in guys, it definitely I'm definitely programmed at some level to do that, but probably it's through natural, like, like hormones at
Well,
some level.
Liliana said too much dopamine makes you numb, which I agree with.
Yes.
To your point,
Yeah.
yeah, I think men are very visually driven,
Mhm.
and one of the ways I've heard it described is men go to intimacy or go to sex to be intimate, and women oftentimes want intimacy to get to sex. So it's very backward
Yes.
how that works. But I do think there is a um, some biology that's
Mhm.
innate in us that is like, I see this type, this body, whatever it is that I'm attracted to. I want to go get that, and there's like a procreation desire that's in
Mhm.
there. But when you live in a society where just, I know that you could bring up all kinds of different things. I'm just going to say, when you live in a society where you say, hey, I'm going to commit to this person, or that's not necessarily societal norm, where you just, hey, I'm going to just go be unfaithful to the person I'm committed to. If you're not committed to anyone, I guess that's a different story. But if you're choosing to be committed to someone, you can't just, act on every impulse and every whim. And honestly, if we acted on every emotion that we felt,
The world would be like chaotic.
it would be like the purge. It would be like the purge, where people go out and just, commit crimes because I felt this way. There's a lot of emotions I think they can tell us about ourselves, but I don't think a lot of them should be acted on. I think sometimes we have an initial emotional response that maybe tells us, hey, why did I get so mad at what this person said? Then you need to maybe do some soul searching and think about that. But if you just act on every emotion you have, I know people are like, about feelings, I feel this, I feel. That's great. But your feelings should not dictate everything that you
Mhm.
do, because you might be really pissed about something, but if you get perspective on it, you realize, oh, maybe I shouldn't be so pissed about this thing. Maybe I am, from like a negativity standpoint, I'm mad that I didn't get this new pair of jeans. I'm looking for jeans, by the way. So that's what's on my mind. But I didn't get this new pair of jeans. I'm so mad. Okay. Is it really worth being mad about? What are some things that you have that you can be thankful for? And I mean, those are lessons that I'm still learning, but I'm trying to also help teach my daughter as well. And she's
Mhm.
10. So she's pretty receptive, but getting to that teenagery phase. That's a
Yeah.
word, I think. Teenagery.
Teenager. But what's really fascinating is that the male biology and female biology, they have two separate goals. Like, this is what I really found fascinating. So after the female has sex, and after that, you when you have touch, when you touch after that, the oxytocin actually increases, meaning that that bonding chemical is actually increased in a female. But in the guy hormone, it's actually the opposite. So,
That's when they
like,
go to sleep.
yeah, like that's where it's like, oh, like I'm good type of thing. Like I'm ready for the like next person.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so what it makes it where guys are normally douchebags, unfortunately, like because like during back then in the caveman times, the guy's job was to like literally go to as many girls as possible,
Yeah.
and like and to not necessarily bond with them. So the way to counter that is the guy oxytocin hormone of bonding comes with sexual attraction, but not when it comes down to ejaculation. So the reason why I'm saying that is because you know how you talked about porn, it makes it where you are less likely to have that emotional bonding because you are basically
You're getting your
y-
fill.
you're basically numbing that part of your brain and making it where that emotional connection is not as strong as if you were just sexually stimulated to a girl. So it's really, really fascinating on that aspect
Plus,
of like
also
how we're
making love to
different.
yourself is just not as fun as doing it with someone else. There's a line in the show Frasier. I sometimes I'll watch some of those older shows, and the Frasier's dad Martin says, like, back in my day, sex was just something you never talked about. It was just something between you and the person you were doing it to. Not doing it with, but doing it to. And that uh, popped in my head. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a bad substitute, I would say.
Yeah, 100%. And going down to emotions, I've been researching a lot more about emotions and things like that. And you had a really good point of like we have so many like emotional regulations, like where we just don't act on our impulses. It's like insane. Like for example, like if you ever like really analyze your thoughts, like you'll be like in a grocery store and then like all of a sudden say like that guy just like tapped me on the shoulder. I want to punch him. Like if you like really
And you do
analyze
it, don't you?
no, no, I don't. But
You
like
could
these
if you wanted to, Victor.
I could. But these impulses that happen in our brain are just so they really like come out of nowhere. And you have to remember, we are the same humans that we were like 2000 years ago, where we were like killing each other and all that. Like we become more civilized
Yeah.
since then, but we still have the same programming that we were.
Our
Like
biology, our equipment is mostly the same, but the
exactly.
times that we're living in are very different than that. Yeah.
Exactly. And you have to remember that we are this like civilized like version of that now, but you have to remember those tendencies are still all like underneath. We're just repressing them. So it's really important to know, like, for example, the reason why I say that is because you might have some underlying insecurities or you don't know where these feelings come from or things like that. And you have to realize there are these shadows underneath us that we're repressing on a day-to-day basis. We just don't realize that they're there and they influence our thoughts and who we are. We just don't realize it. It's really
Well,
fascinating.
the negativity piece, I think that's wise. In the negativity piece that you talked about, we're attracted to that. Like what's wrong or
Mhm.
what's bad. And I believe there's some biological significance to that because if we're in, saber-tooth tiger times,
Yeah.
we're looking for what seems not right, what feels like danger.
Mhm.
And so we are looking for danger. What feels good, we might want more of. Um, but if we're trying to survive, we're looking for what seems dangerous and what could hurt us, and we want to get away from that. But especially, I think now that we've maybe become more sedentary or more attached to devices, there's a lot of physicality that's not being worked out. I don't think everybody needs to go to the gym and work out. Like I enjoy it,
Mhm.
but not like just go and walk or get up and be active. But when you start to become sedentary and you
Mhm.
don't get rid of some of this stress via if it's meditation or prayer or through some kind of physical activity, if you don't get rid of that, it's now bottled up and it's gonna go into something negative. It's like a kid. Like you got this pent up energy, you need to go, run outside and work off some of that energy so that you're not it's not just getting totally cemented into you. And I think that's a lot of the reason why we're more lonely than ever. Now we're disconnected. We're connected to our devices, but we're not connected to real humans. And so we're disconnected. We've got additional stress in our life, and our bodies don't necessarily know how to handle stress well. The stress of my job and the stress of, a woolly mammoth possibly running over me. My brain just knows stress. It doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily know that. Like I can reason, but that initial reaction is ultimately, I believe, the same. And so we have to find a way to work through that. And when we don't,
Mhm.
it leaves us, I would say, damaged, but also it leaves us at a disadvantage too.
And it's important to realize your physiology impacts your psychology. Like when for you made a great point of just like going out and walking, exercising, doing something because that natural process, for example, like the sun naturally going on your skin would naturally make you feel better. It's called affect, meaning like your emotions are based off what your environment is around you. And because your brain is making predictions saying, hey, how do I need to act? And like, is there anything that's going to make it where I'm in danger? Like, how do I need to react in this situation? Your brain is always doing that every single second. And if, for example, when the sun hits your skin, you're going to get this like nice feeling and you're going to get that feeling, oh, wow, this feels amazing. Like, I love this. And that natural feeling is going to make it where your emotion is actually better. And when you're walking and feeling more like a little bit more stimulated, your brain is going to naturally have that more positive effect and emotion. So, and also your breath, like it's so powerful.
Yeah,
The monitoring how fast you're breathing and saying like, okay, like, and literally just like taking 1 second going, like
that helps
it
me.
changes the world. It changes the world of just like monitoring your breath. It's really amazing how much that can do.
Yeah, sometimes when I am feeling stressed, I try to just, I mean, literally take a couple deep breaths, and it helps me to push off that negative emotion. Now, there was a book I read called The Happiness Trap, and it talks about how it talks with like about CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy. And if you've got these like negative thoughts, just saying, I'm not going to think about it, I'm not going to think about them isn't actually the right way to go about handling them. There should be all right, I have this fear, this irrational fear that, it could be like, hey, I'm gonna flip the lights on. I need to flip the lights on and off 17 times or my family's gonna die. That could be it's a very rational fear. Okay. Like sitting with that feeling and feeling the discomfort, it's not running away from it, not feeling only pleasure, because like I said, life is difficult. You have to confront those things. So, hey, this is a difficult conversation I have to have with this person. What's the worst that could happen? Well, they could punch me. Okay, what's the likelihood of that happening? It's probably very low. What could also happen? So, like walking through those different things, the Happiness Trap talks about how you've got these voices in your head, and if you try and keep them, suppressed down always, and you don't address them, they're going to become louder and louder. But if you can just be okay with like, hey, a thought popped up, like I should scream at this person because they cut me off in traffic. But you know what? I don't think that's the best idea. I'm going to keep going. It allows you for them to not be as emotional stimulating. And so you can work past those kinds of negative reactions.
It's so important not to repress those things, like, because they only get stronger when you repress something in the brain. It works in isolation, meaning that, for example, if you are so angry at this person and you just repress it, it builds up over time. Like, for example, like let's say someone forgot to wash their hands, like just like something stupid. Like, you're not actually upset at the person that didn't wash their hands, but you're just like have this built up anger that even this small little action sometimes can just explode, like just the natural instincts of like not wanting to do or seeing someone that does something like that.
Well, it doesn't mean you act out everything, but you address it. Okay, is this really, the worst thing that can happen? And I think a lot of times when I think about being an entrepreneur or working in an organization with other people, one of the easiest things to do is to not talk about difficult things. And if you're in a leadership role, the easiest thing to do is not coach someone. Just let it continue to go and fester. But a lot of times I work myself up like, oh man, I have to coach this person, and I don't want to be hard on them, but I need to be honest with them about, hey, you said this, but really this is the truth, and here's the way that you need to react. And if it's the wrong person, they may react negatively to that. And you can say, look, here's my expectation, here's my desire for this company if you're the one that's leading, and here's what I expect from this role. And if they don't want to be on board, then they can leave. And ultimately, that's probably the best thing, because if they're not in line with your vision, they need to move on anyway. But the people that do care and want to be there, you give them that coaching and feedback. A lot of times, if you're creating a good environment, a lot of times you get yeah, you're right. That's the right thing. That's what I should do. Thanks. Instead of that negative emotional reaction. So we prepare ourselves for the worst. And ultimately, there's a book I read called Fierce Conversations when I was first trying to manage people in my early 20s. And it was like, I was having to have, really awkward coaching conversations with people that were just like, no, I don't want anything to do with what you're saying. But the whole point of the book was, Victor, you punched me at a store, and that's kind of irrational. Let's say this. Mm-hmm. You say something to me at work, we work together, and you're like, man, you are so fat, Michael. and I'm just like, man, I want to say something, but I don't want to have this conversation and tell him that it was hurtful or whatever the case might be. And I'm worried about having that conversation because of the confrontation. I'm worried that it's going to cause you to be upset. I'm worried it's going to cause me to be upset and that the issue is not going to get resolved. But if I don't say anything, what's the impact then? You're upset. I'm upset because of what happened. You're upset because of how you feel towards me. The issue is still not resolved. So a lot of the problems that we work up in our heads, the impacts that will happen when we have the conversation are actually still happening when we have the conversation, when we don't have the conversation. And if we would just talk about it,
yeah.
I mean, the other person has to be open and receptive, and it could take time. But if we'd actually just talk about it, guess what? There could be a resolution, but there certainly will not be a resolution if you don't address it.
Yeah, 100%. So unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. I know we can keep going on for a long time.
Oh, I think forever.
But yes, Michael, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Please tell the audience how to find you, where they can contact you, and everything else.
Just go to VictorDwyer.com if you want to find out about me. If you want to know more about what I'm doing for work at my agency, Cartology, you can go to thinkcartology.com. Like you need help with Amazon, Think Cartology. You can find Cartology on LinkedIn, on Instagram, Twitter. We're working on being more active on those channels. But if you want to find me, you're welcome to find me on LinkedIn as well. I'm pretty active on there, but I'm also on Twitter at Michael J. Marr, and Instagram is Michael Joseph Marr. I gotta work on that uniformity of those handles. But yeah, or you could email me, Michael@thinkcartology.com. I'd probably respond to you. Thanks for having me, man.
Respond to me on Tuesdays, so don't
get your hopes up.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Michael, for joining, and we'll catch you guys.